Welcome back to Tiny Blue Games. My name's of course Csaw or Chris, and today we're talking about Final Fantasy XIV in 2020. Today we are talking about the 2020 Rising event. This is a event that's come out very recently. I'm actually really on the cusp of when this came out, which is pretty rare for me, so I'm pretty excited. And I actually noticed throughout the whole video, the amount of people that are doing these events, if you do them right at the start, is insane. Like, I actually had a lot of difficulty clicking the NPC because there were just so many people around them, which was crazy. So I was kind of excited to be kind of in the hubbub and kind of the excitement of the event instead of doing it near the end of the span of it where there is quite a few less people doing it. So that was pretty exciting. And it's also exciting because I get to talk about it sooner when it's more relevant as well. So this adventure starts in Ul'dah, as most great adventures do, and we start by speaking to a artist named Jben Tia. I hope I pronounced his name correctly, but you know me, I'm just going with it. He is doing a stained glass work that sort of depicts the Sultana and 7 guards who stood by her, which is pretty beautiful, really. It's a very nice piece, and I believe it's actually one of the cosmetic rewards you get as a piece for your house. And I think you also get a minion with this. I'm pretty sure those are the 2 pieces you get, so that's pretty cool. It's also nice because you, I think, earn both of these pieces just from doing the single storyline instead of having to earn them from dailies or something like that. So it's kind of a nice switch up from things like the Moonfire Fair where you do have to grind out those tokens. So this is a very nice difference. We then find out that there is going to be a showing of the piece in the city, along with a Wandering Minstrel who will kind of do a little piece while the piece is getting shown. I feel like I said piece way too many times in that little sentence there, but hopefully it made sense. All this said though, the Wandering Minstrel is coming back, and I believe he was in the past Rising event I did, and I suspect he's been in quite a few of the Rising events because he's kind of our gateway to kind of speak with the director, which is something that was pointed out to me in the last Rising event because it just went right over my head. I was like, oh, this is a cool NPC who's just talking to us. No, that's a very interesting interaction that the game is doing where you are specifically having a conversation with the dev, which is such a cool, interesting piece of Final Fantasy XIV that there is that connection. But we'll get more into that when we do get to that event. So in preparation for the showing, we go and pass out flyers. We pass them out to like 3 people, so I don't know how much of a difference we made. I also like it because they're like very descriptive titles of each of the people. I believe one of them was like very dusty, which makes sense because he works in like a dusty place, but it was just, it was kind of funny. I like the little bit of humor they toss in there. Once we've tossed out those flyers to everyone, we come back to find Jben sort of watching an interaction between his old partner Aston and someone who had borrowed money from Aston. And we kind of find out that Aston used to be an artist, and we find this out a little bit later, but it's pertinent to the story right now. We find out that he used to be Jben's partner and did a lot of work with him. And he's always been kind of the partner that was more focused on the financial side of the art. He was trying to make enough money so that he could allow Jben to kind of work on the more creative aspect and really follow his passion. But as he focused more and more on that money and sort of pursuing that path, he's kind of left art altogether and is something of a loan shark, it seems like right now. At least that's kind of the interaction we get here, that he's kind of threatening this person about getting his money. He's trying to charge really high interest, whereas Jben, his artwork is all about the community of Ul'dah working together and helping each other out. So it's a very contrasting viewpoints here, and ultimately is kind of a conflict in their relationship that we're going to try and resolve in this seasonal event, which happens in a lot of Final Fantasy's seasonal events. It seems like there's always like maybe a son and a father that are having issues, or 2 lovers that are having issues. It seems like we're kind of that matchmaker, or the person who's sent in to fix the relationship, which I think is kind of cool. It's interesting that we play such a role in all of these different little stories, and it certainly is going to become more impactful as time goes on, if we see these NPCs again, right? That's a cool thing to know that you had an impact in. So after this interaction, we go back and speak just with Jaben, at which point we find out catastrophe has actually struck, and the stained glass piece is broken. Some kids apparently had knocked it over, and we're trying to struggle to figure out what to do now because we have this showing coming up for this piece, and we just passed out all these flyers for people to come, and we have no artwork to show anymore. So there are a few options that Jaben's trying to work through. He kind of gives us two to choose from. One of them is to get angry at the kids. The other one is to put on a play where we are the Sultana and kind of like recreating the art piece. I obviously chose the play because it's going to further my Final Fantasy acting career more than anything. That kind of exposure in Ul'dah is something that you just can't find without little miracles like this happening. Unfortunately, the play doesn't happen because we find a way to put the piece together. That being said, the way we put it together is kind of this really cool puzzle minigame, which I think is the ultimate reward of this entire event. Once you're done this, you do get this really cool puzzle to do in your instance, your home, or sorry, your inn. I went through like every word I could possibly think of before I got to inn. And it's a really cool thing. It's in your toy chest, and you can kind of put together these pieces. The one in your home, and I'll talk more about it at the end, is actually way harder than the one you have to do for the event. The event piece is kind of all these jagged pieces that fit pretty well together, and as long as you do the kind of outside, the perimeter of the picture, it's going to be pretty easy for you to find where the interior pieces fit after that. So we put them all together. He glues it together, I guess. I don't know how you put together stained glass, but he puts it together and it's ready for the showing. The final preparation that we need to make is asking if Aston will come to the showing. Jaben kind of tells us, a bit more of his backstory that I've already kind of gotten into, and that he really wants to try and inspire him to come back to the world of creative art with him. So we go and talk to him, and that's when Aston tells us his side of the story. We learn about the whole financial situation and kind of his pressures to make money, but he does kind of allude to at the very end of it that he might show up to the show. The show does go on. We get a little performance from the Wandering Minstrel, and Aston does show up just at the very end, and wouldn't you believe it, they do actually make up and they become partners again for artwork, which is really exciting. I mean, it's kind of this little super quick story arc it makes you feel good that you're helping two people out, so that's kind of nice, but that's not really the reward we're looking for. Jaben tells us that the Wandering Minstrel had a couple words he wanted to share with us, and that's where we're off to. So we go talk to the Wandering Minstrel, who happens to be the same Wandering Minstrel that we've experienced other years. He plays a nice little tune that does put us into a trance. He seems to have quite the knack for that, and we are transported to a different realm, a different world. I always describe this place as like being in space, but that's I've been told many times that that's not the correct terminology for this. I always imagine it's happening in my head. It's kind of a vision of sorts, where it's not necessarily real, and that the developer himself goes on to kind of reiterate that this is a world between worlds, that it is happening outside of the flow of regular events. So that's kind of cool. But yeah, so we're here and we have the 7 characters that were in the painting walking towards us, which is adorable because they're Lalafels. And then as they come in, we also have the developer himself slowly walk in, and he's with the Sultana that we'll see in a second here. And it must be so cool to be, a developer and have a character model and walk in with all of the other characters that you work on every day, like to be that integrated into the product that you're creating, the happiness that you're creating. It must be such a cool feeling. It is weird though seeing like any person depicted as a character model, because it looks weird. It looks creepy. Like it's one of those things where it looks so similar to the actual truth, but it's not quite the same, that it looks creepy. So that's kind of what I get from it. but we do have a nice conversation with him. He reflects kind of on the past, and it's nice to talk to us and all that, and then he gives some really encouraging words to get through the struggling times that we're currently in. A lot of people say that he kind of speaks just more outside of the game as well, and maybe this has to do with the entire world and what events we're in right now, and that it's adventurers like us that are kind of going to lead the way into the future, and that we can get past obstacles. So it's really cool that way to hear just his advice, I guess, in general, because that's ultimately what it is. It's advice, it's appreciation. That's a big part too. He tells us a few times that he's honored almost to be in our presence as an adventurer, and it's really humbling as, I guess, a customer of the service of the game to have that one-on-one interaction and have that fourth wall broken. And looking back, as I did go back and watch the past Rising video, and I was just so oblivious that this was happening. I just thought that this was another NPC, that this was just a random weird conversation I was having, and that it didn't hold so much meaning. But it's such a big thing for a game developer to do. Like, you can't imagine the head of Blizzard doing the same thing. It would be such a weird interaction, and it wouldn't hold as much meaning. I think Final Fantasy as a company, Square Enix as a company, has done so much groundwork to establish that relationship, that encounters like this, they feel genuine. They feel like it's something that both the developer themselves want as well as the player. Whereas I think a lot of other companies would do this and it would come off as a disingenuine, and it would be like, oh, they're just trying to make it seem like they care, which the amount of care that is depicted here, it's clearly felt, even by someone who's quite newbie. So it's really cool that way. But yeah, I really appreciate that you guys pointed that out in the last video, and I'm really happy that I was able to enjoy more of that moment in this video. Coming out of the vision, we are met with the Wandering Minstrel once again. We do have a few couple last words together as we kind of pan out of Ul'dah, and we get some really nice nighttime shots of the city. I believe they did this in the last Rising event as well, and it's a really cool way to finish it off because it does give some really cool views that you might not otherwise get, and it does end with a really nice firework display, specifically for the Rising event. So very cool way to end it. Once things did end, I got my 2 rewards, and the thing I was the most excited for, like I said before, was the puzzle. So I raced to my inn, opened up my toy chest, and took a look at the puzzle. Now, the puzzle, I was expecting it to be the exact same thing as the one we did in the event. However, this is an actual puzzle with like puzzle pieces, and it took me way longer to do this one. There was so many times where I was stuck and I just had to like kind of try different pieces. There are also different ways that you can kind of score better. For instance, if you get a middle piece without doing the full perimeter, you actually get more points. I was able to do this once, which was really exciting, but it's a pretty hard puzzle to do. I did eventually do it, but I think it took me like 15 full minutes to get through it. So it's a bit time consuming. I feel like I'd do it quicker next time now that I know what kind of pieces I'm looking for. But yeah, anyways, a really cool event, really happy with the rewards, really happy that I actually understood what was going on this time, though I'm still sure I'm gonna get comments like, oh, you didn't understand what he said when he said this exact sentence. So if there are little things like that I do miss, feel free to point those out in the comments below. I always appreciate that. But otherwise, guys, thanks for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one.